Well, good evening or good morning to those of you joining us from the Northern Hemisphere, and welcome to today's VLGA LGIU Global Executive Live panel as we discuss how local government is evolving and transforming now and into the future. My name is Chris Eddy, and it's my pleasure to be your host for this live panel event. We're going to look at the evolving nature of local government and how increasing community expectations are reshaping the role of councils, from the delivery of core services to more active engagement in broader advocacy. Our panel today will bring their insights, perspectives and learnings on what their experiences have been, as well as the challenges they've faced in meeting these diverse challenges in an increasingly difficult financial climate. On behalf of the VLGA, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Victoria in particular and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and community, but indeed to all of the lands upon which our attendees may be joining us tonight. We pay our respects to the traditional owners, their elders, past, present and future, and to their cultures. Welcome to this evening's live panel. We're looking forward to a really interesting discussion. And to set the scene, I'd like to call on Jonathan Carr-West, CEO of LGIU, to say a few words. Hello, Jonathan. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Chris, and good evening to those who are joining from Australia. It's really great to be here for another one of these Global Executive Live panels with VLGA. We're long-standing partners here. I think this is despite what it says on the slide, this might even be our 6th year of doing this together. So this is a well-established and very productive partnership. We do it as part of our Future Local Lab, where we bring local government professionals from across the globe together. And we have that focus on the future, that focus on the global, because for 2 reasons, I think. Firstly, because we think that even those really big global future trends that seem massive, whether we're talking about climate or technology or global politics, actually, where do those issues come home to roost? They come home to roost in local communities, and they come home to roost in the stuff that local government deals with. And secondly, because we think that there are many local issues that we're all wrestling with, whether that's housing or the EV transition. These are sort of local issues, but they're common to councils across the world, and we can learn from each other. So that's why we run this Future Local Lab, a program of resources that helps local government to prepare for, to respond to the emerging challenges internationally. So I'm really pleased to see that we've got LGIU councils here this morning / this evening from the UK, from Ireland, from Australia. So welcome. Thank you all for being here. For those who perhaps don't know LGIU or only know us through our daily news update, we're an independent membership body for local government. We've been around for 40 years. We have a vision of thriving local communities that are led by empowered, democratically mandated councils, and we try and translate that into membership by cutting through the noise to try and give you the insight and the practical intelligence to understand what matters today, by helping councils to connect and learn from each other and from experts. Today's event is a great example of that. And by working with our members and other experts to create together solutions to some of the really, really key challenges that we all face, whether that's local government finance, whether that's sustainable local services. And I think we're able to do that because we've got a 40-year history of working with councils. All our work comes out of and speaks back to the real practice of our members. So if this is your first LGIU event, or if you only know us through our daily email briefing, do have a look at our website, our recently relaunched fancy new website. Do take a look. Look, we know that across the world, local government is experiencing significant and ongoing change, transformation, whether that's about increasing pressure on services or changing expectations from the community. All of those things are reshaping councils' roles, taking them from delivery bodies, the body that organises and delivers core municipal services, to, I think, a much more active engagement in social, in economic and environmental advocacy, a much more of a role curating places and advocating for them. That's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm really excited to hear from all our really excellent lineup of speakers. So look, I'll hand back to you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, for those words of welcome. Great to have you here. And I would just like to acknowledge Catherine Art, the CEO of the VLGA, unable to be with us this evening. Normally is co-hosting these events, so I'm flying solo tonight. Let's hope nothing goes wrong. Throughout the course of the session, please feel free to add any questions for our presenters in the Q&A box, and we'll endeavour to get to them either throughout the presentation as we're speaking with our guests, or in the Q&A component at the end as much as time allows. There's a chat function there which you can use for commentary or discussion, particularly with other attendees for the session tonight. We have quite a long list of people who have registered to join us. Some of those obviously will be looking for the recording, which will be made available after the event. So yes, it is being recorded, and those who register will receive a link to that in the next few days. Let us know in the chat window where you are joining us from this evening or this morning, and what things are like for you wherever you are. Let's get started with our discussion. I'll briefly let you know who's on our panel tonight before we start the discussion in earnest. We're delighted to have Helen Patterson with us, the Chief Executive of Northumberland County Council in the UK. Helen is a former teacher who started her local government career 23 years ago, if the math that I'm doing in my head is right here. She's had executive roles at a number of councils, including being the chief executive at Wrexham Borough Council. Is that the place where Ryan Reynolds has the soccer team and the TV show? Side
That's
issue.
true.
It is, right, there you go. Walsall Metropolitan Borough Council as well, before joining Northumberland in 2023. We have Victoria McCurdy with us, a leader within the local government sector, not just in South Australia, but in Australia, I would say. Victoria brings 30 years of experience across several South Australian councils. She's the chief executive of the City of Victor Harbor, where she's been for 8 years, and has served a lot of time as board member for local government professionals and the board for local government professionals Australia as well as South Australia. So lots of experience to share on our topic with Victoria. And our third and final panelist is Tommy Moylan, who has a wide range of experience in local government over 25 years, has served as a local public representative for 15 years, and has been a director of the Association of Irish Local Governments since 2015. Looking forward to chatting with Tommy just a little later. But first up, let's bring into the conversation Helen Patterson, Chief Executive of Northumberland County Council. This is the northernmost county in the UK and the second largest by land mass, a population of 330,000 people. Helen, welcome, and can you set the scene for us? Tell us a bit more about Northumberland.
Well, of course, as you can see from my background, Northumberland is the best place in the world to be. This is Bamburgh Castle, and of course, I'm doing my little bit for tourism there.
Yes.
We have an aging population, but mainly I think because we're incredibly popular. People come here to visit, and then they decide later in their lives they'd like to come and live here. And we are a mixed economy. We have hills, we have mountains. I'm responsible for islands and beaches and some really deprived urban areas, but also some villages that are naturally off-grid, not necessarily their choice.
That's a range of geographical features there. There's not too many council areas, I guess, like that. You're pretty, I know you will agree with this, it's a pretty special place for a CEO.
It's a pretty special place, but also, Chris, I have the huge privilege of living here.
Yeah.
This is my home. And 20 years ago, this is where I brought my children up as well. I didn't realize I would be coming back here to serve in a more senior role. So
Yeah.
it is my home, and it's a privilege to be and to lead across my home too.
We want to talk in this session today about the changing nature of the role of local authorities, and you've painted a pretty diverse picture already of what it's like there in Northumberland. How are you seeing change across your communities in the time that you've been there?
So I think, Chris, I'd take the opportunity to talk about just 2 or 3 things, if I may, and then happy to follow up with any questions that you might have that you might be intrigued about. So I think about local and global, and I'm sure that's something for us all that we're thinking about, particularly at the moment, balancing community with individual requirements and needs. And then the third thing I'd reflect on is, and I'm going to call it tectonic plates. I suppose that's because I'm a geographer by background. So my first reflection would be that local authorities feel closer than ever to global events and trends. Maybe 'twas ever thus, but the causal chain, if you like, between global events and local implications seems to be getting shorter. And if you think now about the Middle East, which is our most current and pressing example, it's got massive implications for us as an organisation, and it's got immediate impacts on our residents and our businesses. Many of our residents live, as I've said, in rural places and rely on oil for their heating. So for us, geography shapes everything. And of course, because we're the second biggest local authority by area and dispersed, we've also got high levels of poverty. When there's an oil shock, it affects right the way through. And as I've said, for those places that are off grid, and also it reflects on the basics, there's a double whammy. I'm reminded that expression, Chris, you might remember, when America sneezes, the world catches a cold.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how I'm feeling at the moment. And also, when something like this happens, the public expect the county council, they expect us to support them and to do that really quickly. Maybe that's a legacy of COVID too. And so we're on the front line, aren't we? You've alluded to that already, and Jonathan's alluded to that. People during COVID got a fantastic support from their councils, and they're continuing to deliver that and to expect that. And I suppose that's one of the things that drives many of us on the call today. It's how do we care no matter what the circumstances for our residents? And so we build resilience, if you like, with our communities through all our interactions. 5,500 staff, all working on a communities first approach. I sometimes call it my fried egg theory. So that's the one thing that we do. The other thing we do is we build fantastic relationships with our members of parliament. We have 4 members of parliament, because we want to be able to lobby and influence government for support in a different kind of way. And also we work with our third sector partners, for example, like Citizens Advice, to help get support to people as soon as we can. So we're great at the out support and the in support. My second reflection, as per the title of today, is just to think about community and the individual. And I'm minded that I've got my phone here. I'm never far from my phone, am I? And clearly, we've got this individual bespoke mechanism that reacts very quickly, instant transactions tailored to what we want. We've got the apps that suit us. And so there's these individual expectations and demands increasingly that play into our public services. More and more, I think our residents are less interested in one size fits all, particularly for our universal services. So there's a challenge for us. They even want bespoke refuse bins, clearly something very important to my councillors. And then at the same time, we've got, as I've said, Northumberland is a place where we have got some mid-sized towns, and we've got villages and we've got hamlets. And so place and local community are really important. And I should know that I live up a hill in a rural village. So person-centric as well as local and community, it can be really costly, but it also makes us think there are opportunities. And that's why our communities first approach is trying to build that local resilience within communities to help them look after themselves longer, because basically we can't be everywhere all the time. In storm season, literally, when the wind blows in the wrong direction in Northumberland, we can have 20,000 houses go off grid instantly. Wow. So building that resilience is a matter of life and death for us. Care homes are not sustainable in rural communities. So people there, how can we support them in that longer life? And as I said earlier, we've got an older demographic here. Obviously, there's lots of stuff we can do through tech and AI. But if you asked me about the Upper Coquette Valley, I would say to you, they've barely got roads, they've got no mains electricity, and they've got no mains water. So the digital world for them is incredibly challenging. And I'm sure there's some other colleagues who will have that same kind of reflection. And then the final thing I wanted just to reflect on while I've got you, Chris, is my plate tectonics. And maybe they're political tectonics. And so I'm not going to step into the politics, am I? Because I'm an apolitical officer and also I'm the returning officer here. But from Northumberland, and I imagine across the world, we're seeing huge profound changes, and the world feels incredibly smaller. And in some respects, in Northumberland, that's quite incongruent because we're a place of farms and castles, as you can see, and village greens and cricket, and we move with the seasons, and it can be quite slow. However, I sense things are moving very quickly. So for most of my time in local government, the world has been relatively stable. The world of local government, the world of national government has been relatively stable, mainly one or two parties, sometimes three, sometimes a coalition of parties, but probably not much distance between them. There was a level of certainty and stability. So in recent years, we've had disruptors, if I can call them that, come into the marketplace of politics. And I've seen these certainties break down. When I say disruptors, it's not a value judgment. I'm saying a statement of fact, really. So I find that as chief exec, I'm spending a lot more of my time on the management of key decisions, particularly as I've got a minority lead council. And often the more mundane decisions are taking longer to think through because the dynamics of how the organisation is now made. I suppose I'm spending a lot of time on statecraft, Chris, which is a really interesting change in the dynamics. And at that point, I'll leave you there. I think I've given you some hooks.
You sure have, and I'm fascinated. I will come back to the fried egg theory. We've got to hear more about that, but I'm always attracted to these discussions about the political environment, notwithstanding
Indeed.
that you've been very careful to be apolitical in your comments. But isn't it true? You've got like 69 councillors to manage, and you've got a significant cohort that got elected last time, perhaps not expecting to be elected on that wave of Reform UK. Am I correct? And I'm interested to know how that's playing out in your decision-making processes and those processes you've alluded to about community first resilience building, etc.
So you're right. We had what's called all-out elections last May. 69 councillors to be duly elected. That is the phrase that I use. In fact, we had 167 elections because we had our town councils and we had our parish councils as well. And over the 2 days, 167 declarations. Over 50%.
And were you returning officer for all of those, Helen?
Indeed. Yes, indeed. I have to say, what gets me through those events is wine gums. That is my secret. That is my secret, wine gums.
I thought you might say wine without gums, and I think Victoria was thinking that way too.
Most definitely wine gums, any sort. Maynard, others are available, of course. So of the 69, over 50% were new as councillors to the council. They were also new as councillors full stop. And they were part of a new and emerging group for us, but party nationally. It was very interesting to say that when we met on the first day of term, if I can use that expression, when councillors gathered to get their IT equipment and to come and sign their forms and get their appropriate bits of software and hardware to help them to focus on what they needed to do in their roles. Many of the councillors didn't know each other. They didn't know each other within each other's groups even. So it was a very interesting coming together. And the key role there for the chief executive is to enable the councillors to be the best councillors that they can be. I know we want to do that all the time. They're democratically elected and we want to help them fulfill that function. So a lot of the early days was about helping them actually understand what had happened, what they'd signed up to, what they'd been elected for. So the training was incredibly important and needed to be appropriate and respectful. Some not appreciating, why necessarily would they appreciate, that the budget was a matter for them. They were one of 69, but the budget was a matter for all of them and all their responsibility and accountability. So a lot about training to start with, and a lot about helping them understand that, yes, they represented their community and had probably been elected on an issue or issues within their individual community, but they, by definition, were part of this greater whole, this one of the 69, and how they might reflect on that across place, as well as in their smaller communities as well that they represented.
Yeah. It's just a bit mind-boggling to us in Australia to imagine a council of 69 councillors. Those issues you've talked about training and awareness and understanding the role that they'd signed up for, that happens here, but on a much smaller scale than when you have 69 councillors. And you mentioned that it's having an impact on getting things done, that those mundane things are taking more time to get through. Can you just unpack that a little for us? Why is that the case?
So if you imagine over 50% of people coming into decision-making roles, not understanding why should they, not understanding how the governance of a council works, not understanding how groups work within the 69, not understanding that actually there is a lead group, although they are a minority by number, not understanding that there's group dynamics within their own group and within other groups. There's a lot for people to understand in terms of how they inform themselves and how they then make decisions. I think it's probably taken about a year, we're coming up nearly to a year, for all the different individuals and the groups to settle and to find their dynamics and to find their way through what it means to be a councillor and what it means to have those responsibilities.
Yes, so it's just a very interesting environment, I'm sure, to be working in. Can we come back to your fried egg theory? Everybody wants to know, what is that all about, Helen? Explain yourself.
Oh, explain myself. Oh, okay, Chris, I'm happy to do that. I should just point out that 69 councillors isn't a large number in the UK. There are
Yeah,
many councils with over 100 councillors.
yes,
So it's just part of the challenge.
yeah.
So
And
fried
you're
egg
not
theory.
obviously you're not impacted by the local elections that are happening. There's elections in the next
No, we're not.
week, aren't there? That they're in
Yeah.
England, basically.
Yeah, so it's England
Yeah,
and Wales and Scotland that have
yeah,
local elections. We're not affected by that because we had our all-out elections last year. But
right,
around us, there are local elections, and the
right.
results, the outcomes of those local elections will affect us because we're part of a combined authority, a mayoral strategic authority. We're one of 7 authorities, and four in that grouping of 7 have local elections. And
Oh,
clearly, if there's a change of administration and control in those elections, it will affect the dynamics of a bigger geographical area and that decision making. Anyway, to my chickens, I do
yes,
have
please.
five chickens. Before I came on the call this morning, after I went for a swim, I not in the sea here. I let my chickens out and I said to them, I'm going to talk about fried egg theory. So back to being a teacher, Chris. Forgive me for this bit, and I am a visual learner. So if you imagine a fried egg, and I'm sure we can all imagine a fried egg, and you imagine the white. I'm not going to go into biological and scientific terms here. The white and then the yolk. For me, the white could be the world. It could be a country. I'm going to say it's Northumberland because that's the only bit that I have an influence on at the moment, is Northumberland, and the yolk is the council. The yolk, by definition, is getting smaller. Now, I've been talking about this for 40 years. Clearly, I started, Chris, when I was 4, but I've been
That
talking
was
about
my line.
because this has been happening. So the yolk is getting smaller. It's getting smaller by resource, by money, by people, however you define it. And it's getting smaller unevenly. What
Hmm.
happens as the yolk gets smaller is a gap appears around the yolk. Who's in the gap? So
Hmm.
I'm worried, and I have been worried for the people in the gap. The people in the gap are not the most vulnerable across my place, because they are always picked up by statutory services. We are there for them. They have rights, they have entitlements, we have thresholds, we are there for them. The people in the gap are the people who are lonely, who have transport issues, who maybe have fairly minor learning difficulties, those that are finding it difficult to access education, those that are unemployed, those that are in poorer housing, those that are digitally unenabled. All those people are in that gap. And so the bulk of my role, and it comes back to the community versus the individual, is to help communities to help themselves so that people have better lives, they are more empowered. There's a moral purpose here, which is the thing that drives me. There's also, let's be clear, a local government incentive in this, isn't there? Because if people are helping themselves, then by definition, they maybe don't come into adult social care, they're maybe not attending A&E, they're maybe not in beds, they're maybe not then becoming disenfranchised in terms of how they actually look after themselves, and they maybe don't end up in a care home. So there's all sorts of things that actually I think are, from a local government perspective, about demand management. But the big driver is how do we enable and help people to have really rich and fulfilled lives, supported and cared for in their communities. And across the UK, there's a whole set of environments where we can encourage people to do that by working with the voluntary community sector. And to do this, we've set up a partnership of key providers right across the county that come together and focus on these basically inequalities to help people in their communities. There are also wider communities like faith communities that are present in most of our villages and towns that we can have conversations with too. So that's my fried egg theory. I'm going to patent it, by the way.
Yes, you should. That all feeds into that issue of building community resilience that you've talked about so eloquently. What does the fried egg theory mean for you on a day-to-day basis? What does it drive you to do as a chief executive, Helen?
So it drives me to do two things. It drives me to work with our politicians and our staff across place and our partners to change the operating model of the council. So instead of being our starting point being, this is what we deliver, this is what you can expect from us, our starting point is, how can we enable you? So we're, in effect, to use the jargon, changing our front door. We have a pre-front door now, where we are working and enabling with communities. We are working with community activists. We have our own community agents enabling change right across place. The second thing it changes for me as a chief exec is the conversations that I have. This conversation is happening today because of the work that we are doing in the council. Here's a fantastic opportunity to influence other people. Just yesterday, I was speaking at lunchtime in a pub. It was all a planned meeting, of course, with a retired professor who totally understands this from academia, he's moved into a new village, he's working with an old institute building. They are looking to develop it and to put services in there and developing wider opportunities within the community. And he wanted to meet with me to say, how do I do this, Helen? Who do I connect with? What are the things that we should start to be thinking about? So I'm doing it all the time in every conversation, as well as at a more larger scale, through actually changing the operating model of the council.
Thank you, Helen. That's inspirational, and we'll come back to you, and I'm sure there'll be questions from the audience on some of the issues that you've raised there. But thank you for opening the batting, as we say, for our panel tonight. We'll talk to you again a bit more before we're done. Helen Patterson, Chief Executive of Northumberland County Council. And there are no questions yet in the Q&A, so folks, please pop those questions down. I'm sure you must have some, and we'll get to those when we can and have an audience Q&A session at the end. I want to move on to our next speaker tonight. We're going to South Australia now, and the CEO of the City of Victor Harbor is with us, Victoria McCurdy. Victoria, good evening to you and welcome to our panel. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much. I don't have a beautiful backdrop like Helen, but I do live in a beautiful part of the world, which I think is
sure do.
Amazing too. So
you sure do. What's your initial reaction to the challenges and the issues that Helen's just described from a point on the other side of the world?
So with the exception of 69 councillors, which blows my mind, they're all very similar. So the complexities and the challenges that we are facing, not just here in South Australia, I say across Australia, community expectations, the impact on councils. We need to be doing more with less. We are that level of government that fills the gaps where state and federal government aren't able to provide services. And yet then we're criticised we should get back to the things that we, are basically there for, rates, roads and rubbish. And I've got a lot to say on that phrase. There's so many similarities. I don't think I could reference many that are related to us as well.
Yeah. So let's get into it. You mentioned that doing more with less thing. We've heard this for a long time in local government circles, the expectations on councils to be the be all and end all. But then there's a dichotomy, isn't there? There's this stick to your knitting, core services, roads, rates and rubbish, as you say. But, I've been a CEO like you, and just try and take something away from a community, a service or a facility that they've had. It's nearly impossible, isn't it?
Well, absolutely, and I mean it's different for metro to regional and remote communities as to the responsibilities and what councils are actually delivering. But we're very much seeing that in Australia, that local government should get back to its basics. But show me a piece of legislation in our country anywhere that says our remit is rates, roads and rubbish.
Yeah.
It's actually about delivering services and support to its community, for its community, based on its community's needs, to represent its community to its wider community. So a lot of it's led by our own community as to what they need and want and are after. And yes, then unfortunately it goes with the resourcing with it. But yeah, exactly right. Try taking some of those things away. It's very, very difficult. But I think, we are a level of government we've demonstrated, and Helen touched on it before through COVID, we are nimble, we are responsive, and we're recognised for that, because that's why state and federal funding comes our way to deliver support and services and recovery and resourcing within our communities, because we can. We're directly there on the ground doing it all the time. So I just think there is this uprising of community concern about what they're seeing globally, I would say, nationally and globally. And because we are the closest level of government, they're looking to us to go, well, it's all your fault. You fix it. We're here to support you. And we're very accessible. Like our elected members are walking around doing the shopping or in the park or at the football club. We're all accessible, yet your state politician is not.
Yes, very, very true. Just on that, just paint the scene for us a little bit about Victor Harbor. You've talked about what you found similar in what Helen was talking about. What's different in Victor Harbor?
Size.
Yeah.
So we are a beautiful coastal regional town in South Australia. We are the place, we have got one of the oldest demographics in our state, probably maybe in our country. So we have got more people over age 65 than anywhere else. So we're a lovely place to visit. We have a horse-drawn tram to an island. We've got coastline. We've got hills. We've got beautiful region. So, but my population, residential population, is 17,000. But we expand to 30,000 in summer and on holidays, because 40% of my homeowners are non-residential. But we are part of the Greater Adelaide Plan for growth. So we are a satellite city in that, and we expect to be building about 13,500 more homes between now and 2050. Yeah. So we have challenges, and we have those who want to shut the walls, close it, don't let any more people in, keep it as beautiful as it is. But anyone knows any regional town, unless we grow and we expand, it will die. We need to balance our demographic. We need young families. We need a working demographic to support all those people that are retiring here, because it is a beautiful place to retire. And we've got infrastructure of places that used to be holiday homes and shacks that are now needing stormwater, curb and guttering. So we're building in new infrastructure, rating a community that, I refer to it as like champagne taste and beer money, and all the needs and expectations, and trying to keep up with that, but also trying to retain that beautiful environment, character, history and heritage that people love. It's trying to protect that as well.
I've had a chat in recent times to Nat Traeger, who's at the District Council of Robe, I think, who was describing some very similar challenges, particularly that issue of people who have holiday homes. They're not there year round, but that creates challenges, as you've just started to describe, about holiday home infrastructure, etc. How do you manage that on the rate base that you have?
It's a challenge, because that non-residential ratepayer, they have the ability to vote in our elections. They have the ability to give feedback in our annual business plans and reports. And some of them are quite influential people within our state. So it is a challenge, and you try and meet all those needs, and then yet we've got community groups and clubs who need support. We don't have a big public transport system down here. We're only 90 minutes from Adelaide. We are very commutable. When you look at the eastern suburbs in Sydney and Melbourne, like most people travel that distance just to get across the town. So many of our workforce do work in Adelaide and commute. We're a central body. Talking about food, we're like the donut, to the middle of the donut. So we've got regional towns around us, and Victor Harbour is the central hole in the donut. So all of our services come here. But the public transport to get kids to come to part-time jobs at Victor is hard. We've got a lot of schools here in Victor as well for our region. So you're trying to support and balance all those things with, holiday homes that are multi-million-dollar holiday homes on our coastal front, which are beautiful, and they pay their rates. I get that, but then we've got to support a community that is struggling to commute and get around and looking for work and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, I can see those challenges. I'm going to throw out a challenge to Tommy. We've had a fried egg theory from Helen. We've now had a donut theory from Victoria. So looking forward to seeing what you can come up with to put on the menu, Tommy, when we get to you in a little while. But just to come back to that, Victoria, that environment, what you've just described there, how does that impact on your advocacy, and how have you had to change your advocacy approach over time as those issues play out?
Well, I think the advocacy is a really interesting part, because local governments are in themselves sometimes their own worst enemies, because we do rely heavily on state and federal government funding. We can't do everything on the ratepayer base, particularly when you're growing. We need to grow new infrastructure to accommodate for all these new homes, but we don't have the ratepayer base to afford it now. Yes, there's developer contributions and other ways of doing it, but I again refer to it, I'm going with food. As local government bodies, we are fighting over the same chip most of the time, from whether it's our state governments or our federal governments, and there just doesn't seem to be this disparity. If you've got a really good advocacy team, you're well resourced in how to work with the politics with our governments, then you're usually, and you can write amazing grant applications, then you're there front and centre. You think of some of our real regional or remote councils that really need the funds, they don't even have the resources to do that. They don't have the voices to be in state and federal governments and getting them out and seeing the challenges that they're having. So, that's where your LGAs and your VLGAs need to be that voice and provide that support. Councils being more collaborative, of working together and having regional voices, and understand that if one town is doing well, then it supports another, so they can collectively go together and seek support, as opposed to my chip theory, fighting over the same chip. So
we're the seagulls in that analogy, are we?
You
said you wanted to say a bit about roads, rates and rubbish, and I know there's been a bit of press coverage. When there's slow news days, they trot out these stories, don't they, and start to come down on councils for investing in public art and other.
That would be the prime example. That's just in a recent piece in in our local paper. Councils wasting money on public art, and they're wasting money on a tree canopy and environments, and they should get back to their knitting of rates, roads and rubbish. And I go, tell me or show me, have a voice of a community member that wants to live in a sterile, boring, non-green environment. Like, those communities have, through their councils, their elected members, this is where I go back to our legislation, its community has made the decision, with the support of its elected members, to have those public art, to have the investment in a tree canopy, to want to care about their environment because they love where they live. And all of those investments are what improve the well-being and the value and the healthy environment that they live in. They're the choices those communities make, because they've had a democratic system of voting in those elected members. No one wants to live in an environment where there isn't art, where there aren't green fields and trees, but yet we are criticised for it. It doesn't make sense to me. It's just it's clickbait news stories that is not, it's not helpful to our sector.
Couldn't agree more, and I think we've just got to continually see that for what it is. But it is true that it's getting tougher to be all things to all people, but tough decisions have to be made. You mentioned state and federal funding flowing through. It's not enough, of course, and cost shifting is a very real issue for councils. So where do you see it going in terms of all the things councils need to do and the capacity to actually deliver on those to the expectations of their communities?
Well, there are many things at House are already happening, but I believe there are areas for reform and we can do better as a sector. Shared resources and resource sharing, or different structures where communities are very passionate about their place. And so when we've looked at amalgamations, that sometimes it doesn't work when communities' identity feels like they've been lost in this big regional vacuum. But from an administrative point of view, many of our services can be done from one administration. We can still retain the councils and their elected body and their communities, but we could have better regional administrative systems that could save money and resourcing, help with that funding, having a better distribution and understanding, but not losing the identity and the representation of the communities within them. I think that's always been a fear, that amalgamations have done that in the past. We saw them up in Queensland when they amalgamated, and then they were de-amalgamating because communities felt that they lost their identity. Learning from our mistakes, but I think we can certainly do things better. There's areas for improvement, but as a level of government, I think we have, and from the beginning of time, given that we were the first level of government in our country, local government, we have a place, and we need to just improve.
Yeah. Am I right? Are you going to elections this year in South Australia, council elections?
We are in November. Yeah.
So are these issues, do you think, going to play out as election issues? Are you seeing any of that yet?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we've just come out of a state election, and we saw a very big change. I mean, while we have a very strong progressive Labor government, and they did exceptionally well, out of our 40-odd seats, they've got 34 of them within our government, so very strong, and they're doing a great job. But we saw a very big diminishing of our Liberal government through various challenges they've had. We saw a big uprise in One Nation. So we've gone from having, well, there was one member in our upper house at the One Nation Party in the previous government. We now have 7. So we have 3 in the upper house and 4 in the lower house.
And some of those were former councillors, were they
and
not?
Lots of them were former councillors who are all about reforming local government. It makes me laugh to one extent, because I'm thinking, well, if it wasn't for lower government, you wouldn't have raised your profile and understand the needs of your communities that you're representing. So it's a really important process they've been through. But now some of that commentary is about, we're coming in to reform local government and we're going to get rid of the bureaucrats and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And it's like, well, absolutely, come to the table, let's look at that reform. But you realise the importance of local government, because you probably wouldn't be where you are without it.
Yeah, very good point. You've spent a lot of time on the boards of those LG professionals organisations, which are very much about building the capacity and the skills of the people who work in local government. Given this drive towards reform, the inevitability of that, given the rise of AI and technology, which is really changing the way we do things in many ways, how do you think we are placed as a sector from a professional point of view in terms of skills and expertise to meet those challenges?
Very good question. I can see many of our professional associations are doing a lot to get our organisations up to speed, and there will be jobs that will change, absolutely, and many of them should, because we have a very administrative within our civic departments. In our administrative departments, there are many jobs that can be streamlined. It can be faster for our customers, our ratepayers, to actually get things done because of technology. But we also got to remember, it still needs that human intervention. The one thing that people like from our local governments, our libraries of coming in, is that human connection. Many of our communities rely on that human connection, so we still need it. It's not going to be lost. It will be different, as in some of the back-end services, I think we will find will save resources. We still need our amazing technical skills, whether it's environmental health and planning, engineering, finance. We still need all of those resourcings, because it's so diverse and complex. But I also see, with the growth, particularly in the state of South Australia, councils are growing in terms of our population growth and housing. we need more people on the ground, our parks and gardens, our operations team. So those workforces are only going to increase. And we're fighting at the moment with private sector and mining companies because we can't keep them on board. But there will be efficiencies, there will be ways of doing things in faster, improving the experiences of our customers and ratepayers. But we still need workforces for delivering of many of things on the ground in our operations team. They're not going away.
You've been in your role there for 8 years, so you know it back to front. What are the things that keep you awake at night that you worry about?
Oh, yeah, good question. Some of the environmental things here, like we've just been through an algal bloom, which, you know, who could predict an algal bloom that had massive impacts on just the marine industries, tourism. Our horse tram couldn't even operate because of the environment that it was causing. It was an unknown. Those sorts of things that, you know, we can have even a bushfire and a flood. You sort of know, you know the befores and the after. Yes, it's scary, and there's just. But when it's an environmental thing that no one understands it. Like, who would have thought our ocean would have got sick? Like, we take our ocean for granted.
Yeah,
it's
and for the
beautiful thing that we have.
For the international audience, Victoria, who might not know what you're referring to there, this was not just Victor Harbour's problem, was it? This was widespread along the coast of South Australia.
Yeah, we have a number of fishing bans at the moment, so our marine industries can thrive and recover. Squid, whitings, you know, fishing, it travelled and it moved, and it wasn't in one spot because it was moving with tides, and it was lots of different scientific assessments of what happened. But as a CEO, I'm not a marine biologist. It was frightening. So, and helping our community and our businesses and our residents to understand that keeps me awake. The change was weather surging. So again, we have lots more stronger storms in our coastal areas. Like, we've spent millions of dollars of protecting our coastal walls and protecting infrastructure. And unless we're screaming out for federal funding, council's doing all that self. So for a small coastal town like ours, spending $4.5 million on coastal walls, it's a big part of my budget. But it's because otherwise we will lose roads, we will lose homes.
Yeah. I was talking to another CEO today about the fuel crisis and how every council in Australia, and this is obviously beyond Australia's borders too, is needing to adjust because of the rise in fuel, etc.
Absolutely.
Does it feel as a council CEO like you're lurching from one crisis to another and you just don't know what's around the corner half the time? Yeah. I guess it comes back to that resilience thing, isn't it? Being equipped to respond to these things when you don't really know what you're going to need to respond to.
Well, and you need to go in with a sense of calm. Like, again, people look to its councils for calm. Even I've had meetings with my staff, even through this fuel crisis, going, the one thing we need to do for our communities right now is to make sure that our city is running smoothly, it's pristine. There's nothing that they have a reason to complain about because they have enough on their plate at the moment. They don't need anything else. So it's trying to go, let's deal with the problem of today. Let's deal with what we can do now. It's like when things go wrong. It's like, it's not what's happened, it's how we deal with it, which is really important. So it is complex. I can be dealing from, you know, an arts and cultural matter to a coastal problem to a staff injury to, you know, something different all the time in one day. And then I go home to my family and I have, great day.
All right. Well, look, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you so much for that. Please stay with us. We'll have you as part of our roundtable a little later on with some audience Q&A. But that's been really interesting to get those insights from Victor Harbour. Thank you, Victoria McCurdy. Just a reminder to place your questions in the Q&A box. We've got a couple of questions. There's one in the chat, one in the Q&A that we'll make sure that we get to. And if there are any other questions from our audience members, please, now's the time to jot those down so we can work out how much time we have to focus on those. I want to move on to our last speaker now, and we're going back to the other side of the world. We're going to Ireland, where we are bringing in Tommy Moylan now from the I've just got to double check this again, Tommy. The Association of Irish Local Governments, a director there. Hello to you and welcome to our panel.
Thank you very much, Chris. Pleasure to join you and colleagues indeed from across the globe. Fantastic morning, stroke evening. So thanks very much for the invitation.
I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Victoria to start off. Any immediate reaction, response to what you're hearing from two very different, well, two CEOs in very different parts of the world?
Yeah, I think the message resonates with our system of local government here in Ireland and the challenges that we are facing. Now, as I say, I represent the elected members, our 950 councillors that we have across our 31 local authorities here in the Republic of Ireland, which are county and city councils. And I think the message, that we have, and we're undertaking a reform program at the moment, is we've been asked to do more with less resources.
Yeah.
And the public expectation of what local government should deliver and what local authorities should deliver in that era of scarce resources. And with our system of local government in Ireland, it's very much centralised. Nearly 50% of all day-to-day current expenditure derives from central government in terms of grants and subsidies. So even that local revenue raising powers are very limited here, and that then impacts on the centralized nature of our local government system in Ireland and, local decisions being taken at the local level. So certainly, I think Victoria mentioned it. And I know Helen mentioned it as well. It's been asked to do more with less resources.
I think you mentioned 950 councillors across 31 councils. Have I got that right? 31 authorities?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
And is that
correct. Yeah.
structure been in place for how long has it been like that?
Well, we went through a major reform transformation 10 years ago in 2014. So before 2014 and over the last 125 years of local government in Ireland, we would have had about 114 local authorities because we had a town, a tier of local government. So we had town councils, borough councils, and then county and city councils. So we had a sort of three-tier level of local government. In 2014, that was all reformed. A lot of the old town councils, in fairness, they were there over 125 years, and I suppose other commuter towns had sprung up, particularly around the Dublin region and Dublin area, which were a lot bigger than some of the other towns that did have town councils, and they had no system of town local government. So that was all looked at. The town and borough council tier of local government was abolished. So the 114 local authorities were amalgamated into 31 county and city councils, and the sub-county structure, we introduced a system of municipal districts for our sub-county structure, which a municipal district is not a local authority, but it's a statutory subcommittee of the local authority. But the members, first of all, our elected members will be elected to their municipal district area, and as a consequence, then they sit at municipal district level and sit then at county council level as well, or city council level too.
Okay. So you mentioned, I think, then that there's a new reform program happening now. Did I hear that right? Tell us what's happening there.
Yes, yeah. So again, we have been looking as an association on behalf of our members. Now, with those reforms in 2014, it did place a lot more responsibility on local authorities. They got a new major role in local economic development, the local response to climate action, as well as all the other functional areas that our local authorities have responsibility for in the areas of housing, social and affordable housing delivery, planning, roads, transportation, recreation, environmental, climate action, local infrastructure, community and rural development. They will be all the functional areas that our local government and our local authorities would have responsibility for. But along with those reforms then brought additional responsibilities, which was very welcomed. As I say, particularly in the area of local economic development and later in climate action. That placed an onus then on the workload of our members as well. And we have seen that, and it was really fundamentally changed the role of the local councillor, whereas as I suppose in the past, our local public representatives, it was, and I don't mean to diminish this in any way because they're still hugely important, but a lot of the focus was on roads and rubbish and potholes and public lighting and things like that, all hugely important areas, and don't get me wrong, but now, and they had limited role in policy shaping, so it was really concentrating on that representational role, sorting out the problem for the local community or the local constituent, which is still a huge part of the role. And I don't want to diminish that at all. But in reality now, over the last 10 years, our local councillors, they're policy influencers, they're community advocates, they're scrutineers of performance, and the whole area of governance and accountability and oversight has really come to the fore. And they are the connectors between citizens and the state, and that's hugely important. And they're dealing with complex social issues. We're going through a housing crisis here in Ireland over the last 15 years. They're looking at the impact of national policy at local level, and there's competing stakeholder demands as well. So our members are trying to navigate that. And navigate that in a more complex world. If you take the geopolitical things that are happening at the moment in across the world, the fuel crisis after coming out from COVID, the pandemic, fuel crisis in Europe here, dealing with the Ukrainian refugee crisis as well from the war in Ukraine. Right. And local authorities have stepped up to the mark on that. And so we looked at that and we said, and we asked ourselves, we did a major research report 2 years ago with Maynooth University in relation to the 21st century councillor in Irish local government. What does it mean to be a councillor in 21st century Ireland? What's the public expectation? And where do we see the role evolving and how can we change it? And that led on then to a system of reform. We got a commitment in the program for government, for our national government, which was formed 12 months ago, to set up a local democracy task force. So that local democracy task force it hasn't published their report yet, but they have finalised their work, and that undertook a huge body of work, looking at a further reform program of local government, but examining how we can strengthen the role of local government and more importantly, the role of local democracy. And Helen spoke about, democracies at local level and national level under pressure right across the world, and a changing democracy as well. So the work of that it was just not about improving local administration, but really on rebalancing the system here in Ireland anyway, strengthening the role of our elected members, enhancing the governance and accountability, and exploring how greater functions and resources and autonomy could be devolved to local government. And again, it goes back to, I think, the theme of this particular discussion in relation to moving away from core service delivery to broader advocacy. We just don't want our local authorities in Ireland to be just administrators of local government on behalf of central government. We want to be partners in that. We want to shape and co-design how those services are delivered at local level, not just take the diktat coming from central government down to local government. And that's what the reform program is about. And we're hoping that it will deliver for the better. And sorry, for the citizen. That's the most important thing. It delivers for the citizen. I'm hoping it delivers for my members, but I think we're all here today as practitioners of local government, working for local government. We work for the citizen, and we should always keep that to the fore.
Yes, I think it's easy to forget sometimes when you see the headlines that the vast majority of local representatives are there for that reason. Tommy, you've mentioned central government a few times. You've mentioned, I guess, the perception of local government in the eyes of MPs. I think there was a report a while back that delivered a pretty scathing view of how central government views local government. Is that driving some of this reform process?
It is, and local government has and we have a huge challenge at local government level. At local government level in Ireland, we're very poor at promoting ourselves. We get all the bad headlines when things will go wrong. Victoria mentioned the Blue VLGA and things like that. They're the things that will make the local headlines, but there's never the good headlines. About, in Ireland anyway, the 1,100 services that local authorities are delivering to the citizens across the board. So we're very bad at promoting ourselves. And I think that feeds in then to the public perception and to national government as well, that local government can't really be trusted. They're not doing a good job. We have to have the checks and balances, and we all have to have checks and balances. Don't get me wrong. But, if we're funding, well, then we keep control over it. We say how it's done. We give them the money. This is how you do it. We have no say in how we do it. If you want to, we want to devolve this function to local government, but you do it on our terms. And there's a very little co-design, or it's not a partnership approach. And that's what we're trying to change within the task force itself. So, as I say, we just don't want to be administrators of local services on behalf of national government. We want to be co-designers of those, but appreciating that national government and government departments fulfill a national mandate, and we respect that. But when it comes to national policy being delivered at local level, there must be a space for that partnership approach. It can't just be, consultation after decisions are taken. We want to be at the table. We want to be there to co-design and to be able to have that little bit of local autonomy and local flexibility, that it can be shaped to local needs. And that's hugely important. But local government has to step up to the mark. My members have to step up to the mark, particularly around the governance and oversight role. There is a perception in Ireland that local government can't be trusted, and or the elected members not holding their executive to account for the stewardship of public funds. And that's a huge challenge for my elected members, because we want to, we work in partnership with our executive, but our executive, I suppose, in Ireland, in our system of local government, there's distinct powers of the executive, distinct powers of the elected members, but over the time, the executive holds significant operational and policy influence. And, the Local Democracy Task Force, it's very clear that we want the elected council again to be the primary governance authority. That should be the primary governance authority. And what we need to do is strengthen that policy making role of the elected council and of our councillors. A lot more structured reporting in relation to the delivery of that policy in the operational remit that the executive have of our local authority as well, and create a clear accountability lines of the elected members of the elected council as well. And really that comes with training and education for our members, and our members must rise to that challenge. As I said, they're working in a very complex space. They're working on huge complex social issues, and their decision must be evidence-based, and there must be support with councillors with data research and training. And that's the challenge for AILG, and we're rising to that challenge. And I suppose the culture of the councillor is changing in Ireland, and it is becoming now a full-time role. It is thankfully, in fairness, in relation to, I suppose, how Ireland has evolved over the last 20 or 30 years. We're a highly skilled, we're a highly educated country, a huge emphasis placed on third level education in the last 20 to 30 years in the country. But, you have to have lived experience as well. I think as being a public representative, in order, our local democracy should be reflective of society, and it should encompass society and be a broad church of society as well. And lived experience is hugely important. Training, third level maybe may not be for everybody, but you cannot discount that lived experience. And that's what our members bring. They bring that lived experience to decision making within the council chamber, and they bring their representative work role that they carry out with their communities, with the citizen. They bring that information and that richness into the council chamber to get better decision makings out of that council chamber, working with their executive. And that's hugely.
Tommy, you've said so much there that I want to pick up on, and we're not going to have a lot of time. A couple of things jumped out at me. A couple of times you said that local government in Ireland isn't trusted. And generally, I've found in all the material I've read that local government is usually the most trusted level of government when you compare it to central government, to state governments in our case, etc. What do you think has contributed to that breakdown in trust at the very local level?
Well, can I just say, I think it is trusted by the community. I think it is trusted by the citizen. The trust is from central government to local government.
Okay, I misunderstood.
No, but I think with the citizen, I think they value local government. I think that has been shown out in numerous surveys and reports and research reports. We do still have a good level of engagement at local election time. Has slipped slightly, but previously you would have been up to 60-70% turnout in local elections. That has slipped slightly to under 60%. But I think between the citizen and their local government and their local councillor, there's tremendous trust. And they value they value the role of the local councillor, they value the role and contribution of local government, they value that delivery of the 1,100 services that are delivered locally by local authorities.
Yeah.
So I think trust at local level is very strong. The issue about trusting local government comes from national government to local government, those central government departments that, you know, they don't really understand how local government works. They don't understand the role of the elected members and the executive. You know,
I'm sure a lot of our audience are nodding their heads because that sort of matches our experience in many cases as well. The other thing you talked about was a greater policy making role for elected representatives is sort of on your wish list, which sort of jumps out to us here in Australia because there's usually a pretty clear line between the policy setting role of the elected body and then the CEO and the organisations responsible for enacting and administering that. So tell us a bit more about that policy level responsibility and why it's not sitting, to your point, with elected members to the level it should.
Well, as I say, over the last 25 years now, the role of the executive and the power of the executive has increased significantly in our local government system. And, you know, if I was to describe it, you know, from national level down to local level, it's the dominance of central government over local government, and at local level, it's the dominance of the executive over the elected council. So the executive functions that our executive hold within a local authority are hugely significant, and that has restricted the role of the elected councillor in our viewpoint, and I think that is shown out in various research that has been done and the work of the local democracy task force. But when you rebalance that and you're rebalancing, I suppose, the governance around local authorities, we're not looking to disrupt it. You know, it's not about disrupting it. It is just about rebalancing it. And as I say, the elected council must be the primary governance authority of the local authority. We have to strengthen the policy making role because the executive has a lot more role in policy setting, and unless there is a distinct what we call a reserve function or a power in the local for the elected council to set that policy, the executive can step in by executive function and set that policy on behalf of the local authority. So we constantly have to keep an eye on emerging policy that's coming forward and ensuring that when that policy is being enacted at local government level, that the executive member must be approved by the executive council. So we're looking at this whole policy making role, strengthening that policy making arm of the local authority, and that's how we should operate. And like when you talk about rebalancing executive powers back to the elected council, I'm not talking about our members, you know, being in charge of allocation of social housing or granting planning permissions or anything like that. That's not what rebalancing is. That's a defined executive function, and that should stay with the executive. But it should be about ensuring that our members, the policy that they set, is being delivered into the day-to-day operational decisions that are taken by the executive, and a lot more reporting on that, and a lot more oversight by the elected members of that delivery. And our members need to be upskilled in relation to be able to hold them to the account. But there is what I would call a balance in power, though, as well, between the executive and the elected members. From a viewpoint, it needs to be a partnership approach. So sometimes our members, you know, and I've said this, they may be a little bit hesitant to hold their executive to account because they know they need to work with their executive to, you know, to sort out a community problem in their community or a constituent problem or something like that, you know. So it is a very balancing. It is a balancing act, you know. But in fairness, in local authorities, and I would say the majority of local authorities in Ireland, there's really good working professional partnership relationships between our executive and between our elected members. And when that operates at its full capacity, that professional, respectful relationship between both our local authorities flourish. And I think that's 90 9.9% across the board across our local authorities, and we're
Th-
looking to even strengthen that more within
yeah.
this program of reform.
Thanks, Tommy. We need to move into Q&A, but just very quickly,
Yeah.
one word answer. Do you have the same number of councillors generally as Helen has described in your local authorities? Like, are they
Yeah,
large
so our
numbers?
local authorities, our numbers would range from a minimum of 18 per local authority
Yes.
to Dublin City Council would be the biggest one at 63 members. So
Right.
similar to Helen for Dublin City Council. But a lot of our rural-based local authorities, which I presume would be the similar to Helen's one in Northumberland, you're looking probably at about 40 to 40 councillors. But
Right.
again, per head of population, though, like a lot, if I take my county in Tipperary here, where I live at the moment, you're looking at a population of about 180,000 in Tipperary, and we'd have 40 councillors for
Right.
that county. So,
Okay, it just occurs to me that creates a very different dynamic, I think, for managing the relationship between elected members and CEOs, which is something that's coming through in the chat as well.
It is, and that's
Yeah.
the system that it's an issue that we're looked at in the local democracy task force. It is difficult. It is difficult going into a council chamber and you're dealing with 40, 55 councillors in Cork and 63 in Dublin. Like that is a
Yeah.
big dynamic, and again, for our executives trying to whatever about managing the expectations of the public, but to manage the expectations of 40 or 50 or 60 councillors is difficult, and this is where that professional relationship comes in. But I think across the board in all our local authorities, there is that respect for each role, which is usually important. The role of the executive and our elected members appreciate and respect that, and the role of the executive, and our local authorities work best, which I'm sure across all local authorities across the globe, when they work in a partnership approach, and that's what we're trying to advocate.
Terrific. Thank you, Tommy. We could talk for much, much longer, but unfortunately, the finish line is fast approaching, and we do have some Q&A questions. So, Tommy Moylan from AILG, thank you very much for your presentation. So I'll bring Helen and Victoria back in, and how we work with these audience questions is whichever one of you has the burning desire to jump in and answer it first, please just do so. I do want to just mention that on that issue of trust, Jonathan Carr-West has posted a link in the chat to some recent polling that LGIU has done with Ipsos on public trust in local government in England, if you want to dig into that issue a little bit more. So the first question is from Amanda, councillor in Melbourne. Jonathan Carr-West has previously spoken of collaborative decision-making and horizontal power being a potential strength of local government and a way to increase trust. How does the panel see that possibly playing out in their own LGAs? Who'd like to open the batting on collaborative decision-making?
Well, I guess that's part of what our community engagement and our consultation is about, is that, while you have your elected body who is appointed as the final decision maker, there are some decisions which require that collective input from the communities or the key stakeholders and interested groups. Most of them will take that on board. I think to Tommy's point, well, we are all public servants and we're here for the services of our communities. Sometimes the council has to make hard decisions that they know what's best, and it's in opposition to what a community may want because they have more information, they're aware of more other challenges and other future decisions, and it's standing together and by each other and being able to explain to their communities as to why they've had to make those hard decisions as well. Unfortunately, sometimes a lot of our communities would say, constituents would come and say, well, because I've put in a petition and I've come and talked to council, then you should just do what I've asked. It's just like, well, in the context of everything else, it's sometimes not that easy.
Thanks, Victoria. Tommy or Helen, don't feel like you have to add, but if you'd like to add something to that quickly, feel free.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I would challenge my members that in the past, when hard decisions had to be taken, it's very easy to hide behind the executive, and to say, oh God, the executive made that decision, because I would berate my members, because they must, you go for election, you put yourself forward, you're there to make decisions, and you stand up for good or bad, and I suppose one thing, if just one slight comment I would make, Chris, that came out of our research report with Maynooth University as regards the challenge for my members and for the councillors as public representatives, rising to the challenge of their statutory governance, oversight, policy making role. That will decide whether local government is given more autonomy from central government. Carrying out their representational role decides with my members whether they get elected or re-elected by the citizen. And is to get that balance right between both is a challenge for my members. And that was clearly set out in that research report as a challenge to my members. You must get that balance right. You cannot be going with the populist decision all the time. We appreciate that you have their politicians and their public representatives and they need the votes of the public, but you cannot go with that populist position all the time. And like that, our decisions do have to be taken sometimes, and that's why we've lost powers, because they were afraid to take those hard decisions, and they hid behind the executive, and then that power was handed over to the executive then over time.
Thanks, Tommy. Helen, anything to add?
If by LGA it's local government associations, then clearly I don't speak for our local government association. But it would strike me that the shifting sands around collectivity are about agreed political mission and agreed political purpose. And maybe in the past, there have been more areas where political parties have been able to agree in terms of direction of travel. So if political parties' drivers now are becoming more diverse and or disruptive, by definition, that is going to have an impact on the collective or not direction of travel and or collective decision making.
Yeah. Thanks, Helen. Just a note, in Australia, when we say LGA, they can be a local government association, but LGAs generally means local government authorities or councils. And it can differ a bit from state to state, just to keep it a bit interesting as well.
So my reflection would still stand in the same sense that it's just at a different scale, isn't it? LGA, Local Government Association, would be the whole of England, and LGA is a local authority. Those dynamics would still be the same.
Yeah. Okay. Here's a question after my own heart. It seems widely accepted, says Jane, that the decline in good local reporting and journalism is having a real impact on local democracy. Is there a way back? I know Victoria talked a bit about the impact of the press, and I might come to you second, Victoria, but I wonder, Helen, do you have an issue with local reporting in your part of the world?
Well, Chris, I think I probably at this point would say I couldn't possibly comment, because there is always an issue between the truth and what sells newspapers or sells clickbait, and there is the challenge, I would say. Can we roll back? I'm not sure we can. And actually, for me, it's not about local journalists and the traditional trade press in that sense. I think the issue is the keyboard warriors, the Facebooks, the WhatsApp groups, and that level of social media where everybody has a view and everybody's view gets louder and louder. My reflection is a lot of the views come at night, and I wonder if a lot of the views come when people are, to quote me, if I was in court as a magistrate, I've been a magistrate for 34 years, people are in drink.
Yes.
And so I think it's, and people feel more empowered. They feel that they can. They feel they have the right to say. I'm not saying they haven't, but there are no rules and regulations around it. And some of the things that people are saying not only are not true, but they can be very hurtful and very ill-informed.
Yes. Couldn't agree more. And I think that's a big part, and it's been reported on, behind the rise of incivility that impacts public discourse as well. But it also occurs to me, Victoria McCurdy, that it's not so much the standard of local reporting, it's more the loss of local reporting and what's filling those gaps, isn't it?
Yeah, see, there is a loss. We're very fortunate. I think we're in a very unique position here in Victor Harbor because we actually have a local printed paper. We have two, which is the Victor Times and the Fleurieu Sun. The Fleurieu Sun represents the region, and the Victor Times is the local paper. And it's, I think, because of our demographic, it's probably one of the most sought after, weekly reads. And it's and in most part, they do a great job of actually reporting on our community, our sporting clubs, things that are happening. council can't really look sideways without making it in there. But it's the letters to the editor where there's a free rule to write whatever they wish. But there is still that pressure of local, of social media. But I know there are some other areas that don't have, it's a cost in producing a paper, and there's a cost. And so some of the only way in which they can get messaging out is through socials. And they can be very good, Facebook posts and linking to websites and keeping people informed. Some areas it's reliant on it, with getting messaging out.
Yeah, true.
But it is, touching on Helen's point, it's very quick to have this cancel culture where something goes up and then you have very ill-informed army of people get on and behind it, and before you know it's got this momentum, and most of the people have no idea, but it creates, and it's a cancel culture. They can elevate and destroy something overnight based on just boom, that's topical, everyone piles on.
Yes, heaven forbid that we have a contest of ideas in society these days. But anyway, I don't want to get on any soapboxes. I've got 2 questions I want to try and get through before we wrap up. Thomas asks, Helen mentioned the changing statecraft. What is the statecraft of local government in 2026? And are there opportunities for empowering the role of local government in that? Helen? So
let me pick up on that if I may. He talks about state in his query there. Thomas talks about statecraft and scalecraft, and I think I agree with that. But I actually think there's another element for us, and I call it being civic entrepreneurs. So if you think about statecraft, this is for me where political, moral purpose come together. For us in Northumberland, that would be tackling inequality. I then put that in the context that we've been exploring together, literally internationally. It's the same, isn't it? That times are changing. So we've talked about increased public expectations. I pay my council tax. In Australia, it might be called rates. I pay it. I expect that kind of challenge. Financial pressures, different financial settlements. In the UK, we have other strategic changes, integrated care boards, strategic authorities, challenges around housing, social care, SEND. But actually, if you just hold all of those, locally, we've built a railway line. And we have 6 stations and more to come, over 1 million passengers since it started. The council has built a railway line.
Wow.
We have built, and we have our own leisure centre. We have our own parks. We have 67 public toilets. Now, public toilets are incredibly important for everybody, for mums with buggies, for people with unseen disabilities, for people of a certain age. I couldn't possibly comment. For our visitors, public toilets are really important, and they are the things that have gone all over the place. We've enabled, and we have brought here a £10 billion data centre. We've done this because despite all of these challenges, and Victoria and Tommy will know this, despite all these challenges, we are optimistic. We are leaders in our place. We have their mandate together to lead across our place, to be those civic entrepreneurs. If I think about Joseph Rowntree in Birmingham and the fantastic buildings that were there and are set up right across the country, they had a vision, and they took that vision forward. They had their challenges at that point too, but they had that vision, and that's what we should do. We should have our vision with our politicians and enable them to make the decisions that are right for our population for now, but actually for the future. There's a legacy piece, there's a future piece for our politicians, as well as dealing with the mire of no money and the tectonic plates.
Yes. So much I'd love to pick up on there. We don't have time.
Oh, yeah.
Building your own railway line. I've only come across that before in Japan, where municipalities run railway lines. Very interesting.
Come to Northumberland and come on the Northumberland line.
I would love to. And data centres is a whole nother subject as well. Perhaps the last one for you, Victoria. One of our international guests wants to hear a bit more about how the council CEO balance is managed in not just Australia but the UK. But perhaps you can reflect a bit on how that works here, Victoria.
As in, how do I, well, I don't use the word balance because I've always said to people, when people say to me, how do you balance that, Victoria? Because my role as a CEO, I sit on other boards because I want to be connected with what's happening, not only in my state, but across my country. I don't ever say balance because that's where you usually drop something. I blend. I have dedicated my life to this sector because I love what we do and what we can deliver. I have 5 children. I live in a regional area. I travel a lot, but I blend what I do, and I don't turn on and off for work. I live and breathe within my community the work that I do. So it can be challenging. It can be stressful. But it's also about relationships. Whether I agree or don't agree with some of my elected members, I build good relationships with them because they are there for the right reasons. They represent their community. My council is diverse, but it's representative of the community that I serve. And I take my hat off to them for giving of their time and their commitment to their communities. But it's just, Helen's touched on it beautiful. I mean, we deliver some amazing things as a council. I've seen it's been life-changing for some members of our community, and that's really rewarding. And yes, there is always going to be the naysayer, those who in their current time in their life, they're dealing with something and they want to take it out on council. I've got to respect that and understand that, but I still feel very privileged for the work that I do. And it's a blend, not a balance.
A blend, not a balance. I think that's a really nice note to end on. Thank you, Victoria. I hope that answers your question. Sean, thank you very much for that. Just leaves us to thank the panel and perhaps just get a very quick closing comment. Victoria, you mentioned, having a positive view for the future. Tommy, what gives you cause to be confident about local government as we move into even more challenging times?
We'll just pick it up on just the last couple of comments from Helen and Victoria, and kudos to Helen for delivering a railway line and a data center. And I think that really sums it up. Local government can't do everything, but it must be relevant in everything that matters locally. And local government can be drivers. So even in areas where local government or local authorities and local councils don't have direct control, they can still be that local driver for it. They can still be that lead stakeholder that pulls all other stakeholders in together to say, we need this for our community, we need this for our area, and we need to make it happen. And they can be the drivers of it. And I think that cannot ever be underestimated. Like, local authorities do have that power. They do have that power to be the local drivers for local development in their local areas, and we should never forget that. And it happens, as Victoria and Helen has said, that partnership between the elected members, between the executive, working on behalf of the citizen, and we need to keep the citizen at the centre of everything we do going forward. And as Helen said, we're building for the future, and that's what it's about. It's about making decisions that affect the quality of life of the citizen and improve the quality of life of the citizens who live locally. That should be fundamental to everything that we do.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you, Tommy. Much appreciate your contribution tonight or this morning for you, Tommy Moylan from AILG in Ireland. Helen, perhaps a very quick final talk as part of this closing pep talk.
So I think it's really been encouraging to appreciate that right across the world, we're struggling with the same challenges. But it's also been fantastic, hasn't it, Chris, to listen to the words that we've used. Service, Victoria said. Tommy said, focus on our citizens. That's what we're here for. We are public servants. It's really old-fashioned, isn't it? But it's just so important. Despite the noise, we are here because we commit our time, our thought, our energy, our everything to the places where we live and we want to serve. And that's incredibly important. And that's what we should be doing as we encourage new people to come and work, younger people to come and work in local government land, because there are the most fantastic careers and opportunities for people. They just need to come and they just need to see.
Yeah, I think most people, I hear kids say, when I grow up, I want to work in local government.
Yeah.
That'll be my wish.
We take that as your closing comment, Victoria?
Closing.
Terrific.
Yeah.
So thank you, Helen Patterson, there, Northumberland County Council Chief Executive, and Victoria McCurdy, CEO at the City of Victor Harbor in South Australia. It's been wonderful to spend this time with you this evening and with the audience. Thank you so much for your insights, and I hope we can talk again about More issues as local government continues to be the most exciting place, I think, to be in the public service. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Lovely to
Thank
meet
you.
you all tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
Thank
with
you.
that, we just need to wrap up with a little bit of housekeeping. Thank you to the audience, of course, for joining us and submitting your questions. If you'd like to speak to anyone further about any of the issues, just drop a note in the Q&A and the team will pick that up and reach out to you. A full recording of this webinar will go out to everyone who has registered in the next few days, so keep an eye out for that. And we're already gearing up for our next panel, would you believe, which is coming up on the 25th of June, another Thursday. This one is the hot topic of public sector productivity and growth, the impact of AI on local service delivery. We're going to look at how artificial intelligence is rapidly reshaping local government and how technology-driven efficiency can coexist with the deeply human nature of council work. Don't miss that conversation. Register your place through the LGIU or VLGA websites. You can do that now, and we'd love to have you with us again on the 25th of June. Thanks to the team behind the scenes at the VLGA for all their work to bring this together, and to our wonderful panellists again, and to the LGIU folks as well. Forgive me for their contribution to putting all this together as well. It's lovely to have had you with us, and we'll see you again for our next session in June. For now, good night or good morning, wherever you are.